Riley Chen pushed her thick-rimmed glasses up her nose as she unlocked the campus bookstore at 7 in the morning. The same routine every single day for the past 2 years. She liked it that way. Quiet, predictable, and most importantly, invisible. At 21, Riley had perfected the art of blending into the background. Her oversized gray sweaters hung loose on her small frame, and her long black hair was always pulled back in a simple ponytail. She walked with her shoulders slightly hunched, eyes focused on the ground ahead of her. To everyone at Westfield Community College, she was just another shy student trying to make it through. The bookstore smelled like coffee and old paper. Riley breathed it in as she flicked on the lights and started her opening routine. She loved these quiet morning hours before the campus came alive. No chattering students, no professors rushing around, no one staring at her or whispering behind her back about how weird the quiet bookstore girl was. Her coworker Danny arrived at 8:30, bringing his usual energy and endless questions. "Morning, Riley. How was your night? Did you finally watch that movie I recommended? You should really come hang out with us sometime. We're going bowling this weekend." Riley smiled politely while restocking the philosophy section. "Thanks, Danny. Maybe next time." It was always maybe next time. Danny meant well, but he had no idea what Riley did with her evenings. None of them did. The morning passed like every other. Students came in looking for textbooks, professors picked up their mail, and Riley helped them all with the same quiet politeness. She had become an expert at helpful smiles and short conversations that didn't reveal anything personal about herself. Around noon, a group of girls from her psychology class came in. They were the type of students Riley watched from afar, confident, loud, always surrounded by friends. They barely noticed her behind the counter as they searched for study guides. "I swear Professor Martinez is trying to kill us with this workload," one of them complained. "Tell me about it." "I haven't slept in 3 days," another replied. Riley knew exactly what they meant. She had the same professor, took the same tests, wrote the same papers. The difference was she did it all alone, quietly, without anyone to complain to or study with. After they left, Danny looked over at Riley with concern. You should really try talking to people more. Those girls seem nice. I bet they'd be friends with you if you gave them a chance." Riley just nodded and went back to organizing the receipt drawer. How could she explain that she preferred being alone? That she had learned long ago that staying invisible was safer than trying to fit in. Her shift ended at 3, and Riley packed up her things in the same careful way she did everything else. Backpack zipped tight, jacket pulled close, earbuds in to avoid any chance of small talk on her walk across campus. The walk home took 15 minutes through the busy student area. Riley kept her head down, navigating through groups of laughing students hanging out between classes. She passed the gym where the wrestling team practiced, their shouts echoing through the windows. She passed the coffee shops where students sat in groups, sharing stories and inside jokes. Riley's apartment was a small studio on the edge of campus. The rent was cheap because the building was old and the neighborhood was a little rough. But it was perfect for what she needed: privacy. She unlocked her door and stepped inside, immediately feeling her shoulders relax. Here, finally, she could drop the act. Riley set her backpack down and looked around her simple space. To most people, it would seem boring. A basic bed, a tiny kitchen, one old armchair, and a desk covered in textbooks. But Riley saw something different when she looked at her apartment. She walked to her bedroom closet and pushed aside the hanging sweaters and jeans. Behind them, hidden from any casual observer, was her real wardrobe. Athletic shorts, tank tops, sports bras, and most importantly, a pair of wrestling shoes that had seen more action than anyone would ever guess. Riley changed clothes quickly, trading her baggy sweater for fitted workout gear. She tied her hair back in a tight bun and grabbed a gym bag from under her bed. When she caught her reflection in the mirror, she almost didn't recognize herself. Gone was the shy bookstore worker. The girl looking back at her had fire in her eyes and muscles that her loose clothing had completely hidden. This was the real Riley, the one nobody at school knew existed. She had 30 minutes before her training started, but Riley liked to arrive early. The drive across town gave her time to mentally prepare for the switch from her daily life to her secret world. Her father would have been proud, she thought, as she drove through the industrial part of town. He was the one who first brought her to a wrestling gym when she was 16, after a particularly bad day at school where some kids had cornered her in the hallway and made fun of her accent. Sometimes, Kiddo, he had said, the world tries to make you feel small, but you don't have to stay small forever. He had been gone for 3 years now, lost to a heart attack that came out of nowhere, but his words stayed with her every single day. The wrestling training he started her on had become her lifeline, the one place where she felt truly herself. Riley pulled into the parking lot of what looked like an abandoned warehouse. To anyone driving by, it probably looked like nothing special, but she knew that beneath this building was a world that had changed everything about who she could be. She grabbed her gym bag and walked toward the side entrance, already feeling her heartbeat pick up with anticipation. In 20 minutes, she would walk down those stairs and become someone completely different. Someone strong, someone fierce, someone who had never lost a match. But for now, she was still just Riley from the bookstore, and nobody would ever suspect what lay beneath her quiet exterior. As she reached for the door handle, Riley allowed herself a small smile. Let them all think she was just the shy girl who worked with books. They had no idea what she was really capable of. Tomorrow she would go back to her sweaters and her silence, back to being invisible in the halls of Westfield Community College. But tonight, she was going to be exactly who she was meant to be. 3 weeks had passed since the semester started, and Riley had settled into her comfortable routine. Mornings at the bookstore, afternoons in class, evenings at her secret training. Life was predictable, quiet, and exactly how she liked it, but predictable doesn't last forever. It was a Thursday evening, and Riley was closing up the bookstore later than usual. A shipment of new textbooks had arrived, and someone needed to get them sorted before morning. Danny had offered to stay, but Riley told him to go ahead to his study group. She actually preferred doing inventory alone anyway. The campus was quieter than usual at 7:30. Most students were either at dinner or already settled in for the night. Riley locked the bookstore door and adjusted her backpack straps, ready for the short walk to her car. That's when she noticed them. 3 guys were hanging around the parking lot, and something about the way they were positioned made Riley's stomach tighten. They weren't students. She could tell by their clothes and the way they carried themselves. They looked older, maybe mid-20s, and they were clearly waiting for something or someone. Riley had learned to trust her instincts long ago. Her father had taught her that much. If something feels wrong, kiddo, it probably is. She considered going back into the bookstore, but she had already locked up and didn't want to seem paranoid. She decided to take the long way around to her car, staying in the well-lit areas. But as she walked, she noticed the group moving too, keeping pace with her from a distance. Her heart started beating faster. The leader of the group was tall, with messy brown hair and a cocky smile that Riley could see even from 50 feet away. He wore a leather jacket that had seen better days and walked like he owned the whole campus. The other 2 followed his lead, one shorter with bleached hair, the other built like he spent too much time at the gym and not enough time anywhere else. Riley quickened her pace, but so did they. "Hey, bookworm," the leader called out. "Where are you going in such a hurry?" Riley pretended not to hear and kept walking. She could see her car now, just 2 rows away in the nearly empty lot.
"If she could just make it there, I'm talking to you."
The voice was closer now. Riley's training had taught her to stay calm under pressure, but this was different. In the wrestling ring, there were rules. Out here, there were none. She reached her car and fumbled for her keys, but before she could get them out of her bag, the 3 guys had surrounded her. "Wow, she's even nerdier up close," the short one laughed. "Look at those glasses. Bet she can't even see without them." The leader stepped closer and Riley could smell cigarettes on his breath. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "I'm Tyler. These are my friends Brad and Kevin. We're new to the area, thought we'd make some friends." Riley's voice came out smaller than she intended. "I need to go home." "Ah, but we just met," Tyler said, putting his hand on her car door so she couldn't open it. "What's the rush? Don't you want to be friendly?" Riley's hands were shaking now, but not from fear. From anger. She recognized the tone, the way they were looking at her, the way they assumed she would just go along with whatever they wanted. "Please move," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Brad laughed. "Please move," he repeated in a mocking high voice. "Did you hear that, guys?" She said, "Please." That's when Tyler grabbed her backpack and yanked it off her shoulders. The contents spilled everywhere. Textbooks, notebooks, pens, and her laptop all scattered across the wet pavement. "Oops," Tyler said with fake concern. "Looks like your stuff fell." Riley watched her psychology textbook land in a puddle, the pages immediately soaking up the dirty water. 3 months of notes were now scattered in the wind. Her laptop, the one she had saved for months to buy, skidded across the asphalt. "Pick it up," she said quietly. "What was that?" Kevin asked, pulling out his phone. "Say it louder. I want to get this on video." Riley looked up and saw the phone camera pointed at her. The red recording light felt like a spotlight she couldn't escape from. "I said pick it up," Riley repeated louder this time. All 3 of them burst out laughing. "Or what?" Tyler asked. "What are you going to do about it, Four Eyes?" Riley stood there, surrounded by her ruined belongings and these 3 bullies who thought they could do whatever they wanted to her. She felt the same helplessness she had felt in high school, the same rage that had driven her father to sign her up for wrestling lessons in the first place. But she couldn't do anything. Not here, not now, not with cameras rolling. Tyler kicked her psychology textbook further away from her. "You know what? I think we should help you clean up. Kevin, grab that notebook." Kevin picked up her journal, the one where she wrote down her thoughts about training, about her father, about everything that mattered to her. He held it up like he was going to read from it. "Please don't," Riley whispered. "Ah," she said, "please again," Brad said, still filming. "This is great content." Tyler leaned in close to Riley and she could see her own reflection in his eyes. Small, scared, helpless. Everything she had worked so hard not to be. "Here's the thing, Bookworm," Tyler said. "This is our neighborhood now, and we don't like unfriendly people. So next time we say hello, you better be a lot more social. Got it?" Riley said nothing. She just stared at the ground where her things were scattered like pieces of her life that had been torn apart. "I asked you a question," Tyler said louder. "Got it," Riley whispered. "Good girl." Tyler tossed her journal into the same puddle as her textbook. "See you around, sweetheart." The 3 of them walked away, laughing and high-fiving each other. Kevin was still filming, probably already planning to post it somewhere online. Riley stood alone in the parking lot for several minutes, watching her notebook pages dissolve in the dirty water. Everything she cared about was either ruined or scattered across the pavement. She started picking up what she could save. Her laptop had a crack across the screen but still turned on. Some of her pens had rolled under other cars. Her psychology textbook was completely destroyed. As she gathered her things, Riley felt something changing inside her. The same quiet anger that had been building for weeks, maybe years, was getting stronger. She thought about her father's words, about staying small, about not having to be helpless forever. By the time she got in her car, Riley had made a decision. Tonight's training session was going to be different. Riley sat in her car for 10 minutes after arriving at the warehouse, staring at her cracked phone screen. The video was already online. Kevin had posted it on 3 different social media platforms with captions like "Local, Nerd Gets Reality Check," and "When Keeping, It Real Goes Wrong." The comments were worse than the video itself. She turned off her phone and grabbed her gym bag from the back seat. Tonight, she needed this more than ever. The side entrance to the warehouse looked exactly the same as always. A plain metal door with peeling paint that most people would walk right past. But when Riley pressed the buzzer, she heard footsteps coming downstairs she knew led to another world entirely. Coach Martinez opened the door and immediately noticed something different in Riley's face. "You're early tonight, Storm," he said, using her wrestling name. Coach had given her that nickname 3 years ago, after watching her demolish opponent after opponent without saying a single word. "Silent Storm," he called her, because she fought like a hurricane but never trash-talked or celebrated her wins. "I need to train," Riley said simply. Coach had been running underground wrestling matches for 15 years. He could read fighters better than most people could read books, and right now he was reading anger in every line of Riley's body. "What happened?" he asked as they walked down the concrete steps. Riley didn't answer right away. The stairs led down into what used to be the warehouse basement, but Coach had transformed it into something special. The main area had a professional wrestling ring in the center, surrounded by folding chairs for the crowds that came to watch the matches. Around the edges were training areas, heavy bags, speed bags, mats for grappling, and weights that had seen decades of use. The smell hit Riley like it always did, a mixture of sweat, leather, and determination that made her feel more at home than anywhere else on earth. "Bad day at school," she finally answered. Coach nodded. He had heard that story before from dozens of fighters over the years. People came to his gym for all kinds of reasons, but they usually stayed for the same one, because it was the only place they felt truly powerful. Well then, Coach said, let's see what you can do with that energy. Riley went to the women's locker room and changed into her training gear. When she looked in the mirror, the transformation was complete. Gone were the baggy clothes and thick glasses, replaced by athletic shorts, a fitted tank top, and contact lenses that made her dark eyes look fierce instead of hidden. She pulled her hair back in a tight bun and wrapped her hands with the same black tape she had used for every training session since her father brought her here for the first time. When she emerged from the locker room, the gym was starting to fill up with other fighters. There was Antonio, a former Golden Gloves boxer who was trying to learn submission holds. Luna, a martial arts instructor who came here to test her skills against wrestlers. And Diesel, a mountain of a man who had been competing in these underground matches longer than anyone could remember. They all nodded at Riley with respect. In the outside world, she was nobody. Down here, she was royalty. Storm's got that look tonight, Antonio said to Luna as Riley walked past. Someone's about to get hurt. Coach gathered the fighters around the main ring. Thursday nights were training nights, but they always ended with practice matches between the regulars. Tonight, there were 8 fighters ready to compete. All right, people, Coach announced. Same rules as always. No permanent damage, no moves that could end careers, and if I say stop, you stop immediately. Storm, you're up first. Riley stepped into the ring and immediately felt her heart rate slow down. This was where she belonged. This was where the quiet bookstore girl disappeared completely. Her opponent tonight was a new fighter named Cruz, a college football player who thought his size would give him an advantage. He outweighed Riley by 60 pounds and had at least 6 inches on her, but Coach had seen this matchup before. The two fighters touched gloves in the center of the ring, and then Coach gave the signal to begin. Cruz came at Riley immediately, trying to use his weight and strength to overpower her. But Riley had learned long ago that the biggest opponents usually fell the hardest. She sidestepped his first charge and used his momentum against him, grabbing his arm and spinning him around. Before Cruz knew what was happening, Riley had him in a headlock that was tight enough to control him but not tight enough to hurt him. Patience, she whispered in his ear. Wrestling isn't about being the biggest. Cruz tried to break free, but Riley adjusted her position and took him down to the mat, with a move her father had taught her years ago. Within seconds, she had him pinned with a combination hold that made it impossible for him to escape without risking injury. Tap out, Coach called from ringside. Storm wins. Cruz tapped Riley's arm to signal his surrender, and she immediately released the hold. She helped him to his feet and shook his hand like she did with every opponent. How did you do that? Cruz asked, rubbing his shoulder. I couldn't move. Practice, Riley said simply. The crowd that had gathered around the ring started clapping. In the 3 years Riley had been training here, she had never lost a practice match. Not once. Next up, Coach called. For the next 2 hours, Riley faced 4 more opponents. Antonio, who tried to use his boxing skills but found himself on the mat within minutes. Luna, who gave her the toughest fight of the night, but eventually fell to a submission hold that Riley had been perfecting for months. 2 other new fighters who barely lasted long enough to break a sweat. Each victory felt like a small piece of revenge against Tyler and his friends. Every successful takedown was proof that she was stronger than they thought. Every submission hold was evidence that she didn't have to stay helpless. By the time training was over, Riley felt like herself again. The humiliation from earlier was still there, but it had transformed into something else. Fuel for the fire that burned inside her every time she stepped into the ring. Storm, Coach called as the other fighters started heading home. Got a minute? Riley walked over, still breathing heavily from her final match. I've been doing this for 15 years, Coach said, and I've never seen anyone with your natural ability. You could go professional if you wanted to. Riley shook her head. This is enough for me. Coach studied her face. Is it though? Because whatever happened to you today, it's eating you alive, and the only way to deal with that kind of anger is to face it head on. Riley knew he was right, but she also knew that her 2 worlds had to stay separate. The quiet bookstore girl couldn't survive if people knew about Silent Storm, and Silent Storm couldn't exist if the outside world discovered her secret. I'm fine, Coach, she said. This is all I need. But as Riley drove home that night, she couldn't stop thinking about the video that was probably being shared across campus. She couldn't stop seeing Tyler's face or hearing the laughter of his friends, or remembering the way her journal had dissolved. In that dirty puddle, maybe keeping her world separate wasn't working anymore. Maybe it was time for things to change. Friday afternoon came faster than Riley expected. She had spent the entire night replaying Thursday's training session in her mind, feeling the power she had in that ring, remembering the respect in the other fighter's eyes. But now, sitting in her psychology class, she was back to being invisible. The video from the parking lot incident had spread further than she thought possible. Students she had never even spoken to were snickering when she walked past. Someone had shared it in the campus Facebook group with the caption, "Local bookworm learns about real world." Riley kept her head down and took notes like always, but inside, something was different. The anger that had fueled her training session was still there, simmering just below the surface. After class, she decided to stop by the campus coffee shop before her shift at the bookstore. She needed caffeine and a few minutes to herself before facing Danny's cheerful questions about her weekend plans. The grind was packed with the usual Friday afternoon crowd. Students hunched over laptops, study groups sharing tables, and the constant buzz of conversations about weekend plans and upcoming exams. Riley ordered her usual black coffee and found a small table near the window, where she could sit alone. She was checking her work schedule on her phone when she heard the voice that made her stomach drop. Well, look who it is. Riley looked up to see Tyler standing next to her table, flanked by Brad and Kevin, just like before. Tyler had that same cocky smile, but there was something darker in his eyes today. "If it isn't our favorite campus celebrity," Tyler said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "Heard you're famous on social media now." Riley started to stand up, but Tyler put his hand on her shoulder and pushed her back down into her chair. "Where are you going, sweetheart?" "We're just being friendly." The coffee shop was busy enough that most people weren't paying attention, but Riley could see a few students starting to notice the commotion. Some of them probably recognized her from the video. "I need to get to work," Riley said quietly. "Work can wait," Tyler said, sitting down across from her without being invited. Brad and Kevin flanked her on either side, blocking any easy escape route. Kevin was already pulling out his phone. "This is perfect. Round 2 with the campus nerd." Riley's hands were shaking, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was from trying to hold back 3 years of training that was telling her exactly how to handle this situation. "You know what I've been thinking about?" Tyler continued. "That little performance you put on yesterday. All that begging and pleading. It was almost too easy." He reached across the table and flicked Riley's glasses, making them slide down her nose. "I mean, look at you. You're like a scared little mouse. It's kinda pathetic." That's when something inside Riley snapped. Not the quiet anger she had been carrying around, but something deeper. Something that had been building since her father died. Since she started hiding who she really was. Since she decided that being invisible was safer than being strong. "Stop," Riley said, and her voice was different, clearer, stronger. Tyler laughed. "Oh, the mouse has found her voice. Say it louder, sweetheart. I want everyone to hear." Riley looked around the coffee shop. Students at nearby tables were definitely watching now. Some had their phones out, probably hoping to catch another viral moment. She could see the baristas behind the counter looking concerned but unsure whether to intervene. "I said stop," Riley repeated, and this time she stood up. Tyler stood up too, using his height advantage to try to intimidate her. He was at least 6 inches taller and probably 50 pounds heavier. "Or what?" Tyler asked. "What are you going to do about it, Four Eyes?" Riley took off her glasses and set them carefully on the table. Without them, her dark eyes looked completely different, focused, dangerous. "I'm going to ask you one more time," Riley said in a voice that carried across the now quiet coffee shop. "Leave me alone." Tyler reached for her wrist, probably planning to drag her outside like he had tried to do before. But this time, Riley was ready. The moment Tyler's hand touched her arm, Riley moved. In one fluid motion that took less than 2 seconds, she grabbed his wrist, stepped to the side, and used his own momentum to send him stumbling forward. Before he could recover his balance, Riley swept his legs and Tyler hit the floor hard. The coffee shop erupted in gasps and surprised shouts. Brad, who had been standing to Riley's left, tried to grab her from behind. Big mistake. Riley ducked under his arm, spun around, and had him in a submission hold that made him yelp in pain. She applied just enough pressure to control him without causing real damage, exactly like Coach had taught her. "Let me go," Brad gasped. "Say please," Riley said calmly, echoing the words they had used to humiliate her. Kevin was the biggest of the three, but he was also the slowest to react. By the time he figured out what was happening, Riley had already released Brad and turned her attention to him. "I don't want to hurt you," Riley said, and she meant it. Despite everything they had done to her, she wasn't interested in revenge. She just wanted them to stop, but Kevin came at her anyway, probably thinking he could overpower her with sheer size. Riley sidestepped his charge and used a move she had practiced hundreds of times in the gym. Kevin found himself face down on the coffee shop floor with Riley controlling his arm in a hold that would be very painful if he tried to move. The entire sequence had taken less than 30 seconds. Three guys who had seemed so threatening just moments ago were now on the floor, completely dominated by the quiet girl they had thought was an easy target. Tyler was the first to recover. He got to his feet slowly, his face red with embarrassment and anger. "You're crazy," he said. "You can't just attack people." Riley looked at him calmly. "You grabbed me first. I was defending myself." She could see students all around the coffee shop with their phones out recording everything, but this time she didn't care. Let them post their videos. Let them see what really happened. "This isn't over," Tyler said, backing toward the door. "Yes, it is," Riley replied. "If you come near me again, if you bother anyone else on this campus, if you even look at me wrong, I promise you won't like what happens next." There was something in her voice that made Tyler believe her. All three of them headed for the exit, Kevin still rubbing his arm where Riley had controlled him. As they reached the door, Tyler turned back one more time. "You think you're tough now?" "We'll see about that." But his words didn't have the same power they'd had before. Riley just stared at him until he left. The coffee shop was completely silent for several seconds after they were gone. Then slowly people started clapping. First just one person, then several, then most of the students in the room. Riley picked up her glasses and put them back on, but somehow they didn't make her look small anymore. She grabbed her backpack and headed for the door, leaving behind the quiet bookstore girl who had walked in just 20 minutes earlier. Everything was about to change. By the time Riley made it to her shift at the bookstore, her phone was buzzing nonstop. The videos from the coffee shop were already spreading across social media faster than she could have imagined. But this time, the comments were different. "Holy crap! Did you see how fast she moved? Those guys got what they deserved. Who is this girl? She's incredible." Danny was waiting for her at the bookstore entrance, practically bouncing with excitement. "Riley! Oh my God, Riley! Did you see? You're everywhere! Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, everyone's talking about you." Riley unlocked the door, trying to process what was happening. Just yesterday, she had been the quiet girl who got picked on. Now students were calling her incredible. "Danny, I need to work," she said, but she couldn't hide the small smile on her face. "Work? Are you kidding me? You're famous. Do you know what people are saying about you right now?" Riley's phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from a number she didn't recognize. "Is this Silent Storm from the underground matches? We need to talk." Her blood ran cold. Someone had made the connection. Then another text. "Dude, I knew I recognized those moves. You're the undefeated champ from the pit." And another. "Silent Storm goes to our school." This is insane. Danny was still talking, but Riley had stopped listening. She pulled up social media on her phone and saw what Danny was so excited about. The video from the coffee shop had been shared thousands of times, but people weren't just sharing it randomly. They were comparing it to other videos. Videos of underground wrestling matches featuring a fighter called Silent Storm. Someone had posted a side-by-side comparison. On the left, Riley taking down Tyler in the coffee shop. On the right, Silent Storm defeating opponent after opponent in underground matches. The similarities were impossible to ignore. That's her. That's definitely her. Read one comment with hundreds of likes. "The bookstore girl is Silent Storm. I can't believe it. She's been hiding in plain sight this whole time." Riley sank into the chair behind the bookstore counter, overwhelmed by what was happening. "Riley?" Danny's voice was gentler now. "Are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." Before Riley could answer, the bookstore door chimed and a group of students walked in. But they weren't here for textbooks. "Excuse me, one of them said nervously. Are you Riley Chen? The girl from the coffee shop video? Riley nodded slowly. We just wanted to say thank you, another student said. Those guys have been bothering people all semester. What you did today was amazing. More students started coming in throughout the afternoon. Some wanted to meet the girl who had stood up to the campus bullies. Others wanted to know if she was really Silent Storm, the underground wrestling champion. Riley found herself opening up in ways she never had before. Yes, she had been training in underground wrestling for 3 years. Yes, she was undefeated in her division. No, she had never expected her two worlds to collide like this. Around 5 o'clock, Coach Martinez walked through the bookstore door. Storm, he said with a knowing smile. We need to talk. Riley asked Danny to cover for her and stepped outside with Coach. So, Coach said, seems like your secret's out. Riley nodded, feeling like her carefully constructed life was falling apart. I don't know what to do. Everyone knows now. Coach studied her face. How does it feel? Riley thought about the question.
How did it feel?
Terrifying, overwhelming, but also free, she said quietly. It feels free. Good, Coach said. Because I've got some news. There's a promoter who's been watching our matches for months. He's been asking about Silent Storm, wondering if you'd be interested in going professional. Today's video, it just made him even more interested. Riley's eyes widened. Professional wrestling? Think about it, Coach said. But either way, you don't have to hide anymore. You can be both people, the smart student and the champion fighter. There's no rule that says you have to choose. That evening, Riley decided to do something she had never done before. She went to the campus dining hall for dinner instead of eating alone in her apartment. The reaction was immediate. Students pointed and whispered, but not in the cruel way they had before. There was respect in their voices, curiosity instead of mockery. A girl from her psychology class approached her table. Riley, I'm Ashley. I sit 2 rows behind you in Professor Martinez's class. I just wanted to say what you did today was incredible. Those guys have been jerks to everyone. Soon Ashley was joined by others, students who had seen the videos, who had heard about Silent Storm, who wanted to know her story. For the first time in her college career, Riley found herself surrounded by people who were genuinely interested in talking to her. The conversation flowed easier than she had expected. She told them about starting wrestling after her father died, about how it helped her deal with grief and anger. She explained why she had kept it secret, how she had been afraid that people would treat her differently if they knew. But being treated differently isn't always bad, Ashley pointed out. I mean, now people know not to mess with you. Riley laughed, and it felt good. That's definitely true. Later that night, Riley was walking to her car when she spotted a familiar figure waiting by her usual parking spot. For a moment, her guard went up, but then she realized it was just Tyler. He was alone this time, and there was something different about his posture. Less cocky, more uncertain. Riley, he said as she approached. Can we talk? Riley stopped a few feet away, ready to defend herself if needed. What do you want? Tyler ran his hand through his hair, looking uncomfortable. I wanted to apologize for what we did yesterday and today and everything. Riley raised an eyebrow. Apologize? Look, I saw the videos online. I know who you are now. Silent Storm, right? Underground wrestling champion? Tyler shook his head. We had no idea. We thought you were just easy to pick on? Riley finished. Tyler nodded, looking ashamed. Yeah, and that was wrong, even if you hadn't been able to, kick our butts. Riley studied his face, looking for signs that this was another trick. But Tyler seemed genuinely sorry. We're leaving town, Tyler continued. My cousin got us jobs in another state, and honestly, after today, we figured it was time to go. But I wanted to say I'm sorry first. What we did to you wasn't okay. Riley was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Thank you for apologizing. That means something. Tyler nodded and started to walk away, then turned back. For what it's worth, he said, you're pretty incredible, both versions of you. After Tyler left, Riley sat in her car for a few minutes, thinking about everything that had happened. 2 days ago, she had been invisible, hiding who she really was, afraid to let anyone see her strength. Now everyone knew her secret, and the world hadn't ended. In fact, it felt like it was just beginning. Riley pulled out her phone and called Coach Martinez. Coach, it's Riley. About that professional wrestling opportunity you mentioned, I think I'd like to hear more about it. As she drove home that night, Riley realized she didn't have to choose between being the quiet student and the fierce fighter. She could be both. She could be herself, completely and unapologetically. And that felt like the biggest victory of all.